Welcome back. This is a story out of Grimm's Fairy Tales. I'm reading The White Snake today. This is a story of how a servant's life changed forever. Maybe all summed up, the lesson is be kind to animals. Or maybe even don't date women who expect you to compete for their love. I don't know, this story is hard to explain. If you have a more thoughtful explanation, I'd be happy to hear it. A long time ago, there lived a king whose wisdom was spoken of in all the country. Nothing remained long unknown to him, and it was as if the knowledge of hidden things was brought to him in the air. However, he had a curious custom. Every day at dinner, after the table had been cleared and everyone gone away, a trusty servant had to bring in one other dish. But it was covered up, and the servant himself did not know what was in it. And no one else knew, for the king waited until he was quite alone before he uncovered the dish. This had gone on a long time, but at last there came a day when the servant could restrain his curiosity no longer. But as he was carrying the dish away, he took it into his own room, and as soon as he fastened the door securely, he lifted the cover, and there he saw a white snake lying on a dish. After seeing it, he could not resist the desire to taste it, for whatever reason, so he cut off a small piece and put it into his mouth. As soon as it touched his tongue, he heard outside his window a strange chorus of delicate voices. He went and listened, and found that it was the sparrows talking together, and telling each other all they had seen in the fields and the woods. The virtue of the snake had given him power to understand the speech of animals. Now it happened one day that the queen lost her most splendid ring, and suspicion fell upon that trusty servant, who had the general superintendence, and he was accused of stealing it. The king summoned him to his presence, and after many reproaches, told him that if by the next day he was not able to name the thief, he should be considered guilty and punished. He could get no better sentence. In his uneasiness and anxiety, he went outside into the courtyard and began to consider what he should do in so great a necessity. There sat the ducks by the running water and rested themselves, and plumed themselves with their flat bills, and held a comfortable chat. The servant stayed where he was and listened to them. "Wait, what? Why is it that the wise king has to eat of the white snake once a day to talk to the animals and everything, to get knowledge, but the servant ate one bite and seemingly has this power forever?" Anyway, I'm just detecting little things. They told how they had waddled about all day yesterday morning and found some good food. And then one of them said pitifully, "Something lies very heavy in my throat. It is the ring that was lying under the queen's window. I swallowed it down in too great a hurry." Then the servant seized her by the neck, took her into the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Kill this one. She is quite ready for the cooking." "Yes," said the cook, weighing it in her hand. "There will be no trouble of fattening this one. It has been ready ever so long." She then slit up its neck, and when it was open, the queen's ring was found inside its craw. The servant could now clearly prove his innocence, and in order to make up for the injustice he had suffered, the king permitted him to ask some favor for himself, and also promised him the place of the greatest honor in the royal household. But the servant refused this, and only asked for a horse and money for traveling, for he had a fancy to see the world, and took about him a little. So his request was granted, and he set out on his way. And one day he came to a pool of water, by which he saw 3 fish who had gotten tangled in the rushes. They were panting for water. Although fish are usually considered dumb creatures, he understood very well their lament that they were to perish so miserably. And as he had a compassionate heart, he dismounted from his horse and put the 3 fish back into the water. They quivered all over with joy, stretched out their heads, and called out to him, "We will remember and reward you, because you have delivered us." He rode on, and after a while he heard a very small voice come up from the sand underneath his horse's feet. He listened and understood how it was an ant king. He was complaining, if only these men could keep off with their great awkward beasts. Here comes this stupid horse treading down my people with his hard hoofs. The man then turned his horse to the side path, and the ant king called out to him, "We will remember and reward you." But also, why is Mr. Ant King marching his ants right down the middle of a road anyway, if he didn't want all of his ants to die? I need Ant-Man! The path led him through a wood, and there he saw a father raven and a mother raven standing by their nest and throwing their young ones out. "Off with you, young gallows birds!" cried they. "We cannot stuff you any more. You are big enough to fend for yourselves." The three poor ravens lay on the ground, fluttering and beating the air with their pinions and crying, "We are poor helpless things. We cannot fend for ourselves. We cannot even fly. We can only die of hunger." Then the kind young man dismounted, killed his horse with his dagger, and left it to the young ravens for food. Wait, what? They came hopping up, feasted away at it, and cried, "We will remember and reward you." So now he had to use his own legs, and when he had gone a long way he came to a great town. There was much noise and thronging in the streets, and there came a man on a horse who proclaimed, "The king's daughter seeks a husband, but he who wishes to marry her must perform a difficult task, and if he cannot carry it through successfully, he shall lose his life." Many have already tried, but had lost their lives in vain. The young man, when he saw the king's daughter, was so dazzled by her great beauty that he forgot all danger. Oh, what a fool! Went to the king and offered himself as a wooer. Then he was led to the seaside, and a gold ring was thrown into the water before his eyes. Then the king told him that he must fetch the ring up from the bottom of the sea, saying, "If you come back without it, you shall be put under the waves again and again until you are drowned." Everyone pitied the handsome young man, but they went and left him alone by the sea. As he was standing on the shore thinking of what he should do, there came 3 fish swimming by, none other than those who he had set free. The middle one had a mussel in his mouth, and he laid it on the sand at the young man's feet. When he took it up and opened it, there was a golden ring inside. Full of joy, he carried it to the king and expected the promised reward. But the king's daughter, proud of her high birth, despised him and sent him on another task to perform. And that's why you don't date women who expect you to compete for them. Anyway, she went out into the garden and strewed about over the grass 10 sacks full of millet seeds. "By the time the sun rises in the morning, you must have picked up all these," she said, "and not a grain must be wanting." The young man sat down in the garden and considered how it was possible to do this task. But he could contrive nothing, and stayed there, feeling very sorrowful and expecting to be led to death at the break of day. But when the first beams of the sun fell on the garden, he saw that the 10 sacks were all filled, standing one by the other, and not even a grain was missing. The Ant King had arrived in the night with his thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had picked up all the millet seeds and filled the sacks with great industry. The king's daughter came herself into the garden and saw with astonishment that the young man had performed all that had been given him to do. But she could not let her proud heart melt, but said, "Although he has completed the 2 tasks, he shall not be my bridegroom unless he brings me an apple from the tree of life." Ah, that was her play all along. She wanted the freaking tree of life apple. Anyway, the young man did not know where the tree of life was to be found, but he set out and went on as long as his feet could carry him. But he had no hopes of finding it. When he had gone through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood and seated himself under a tree to go to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the boughs, and a golden apple fell into his hand. Immediately 3 ravens flew toward him, perched on his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens that you delivered from starving. When we grew big, we heard that you were seeking the golden apple. We flew over the sea to the end of the earth, where the tree of life stands. And we fetched the apple, full of joy." The man set off on his way home, and brought the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who was without any further excuse. So they divided the apple of life and ate it together, and their hearts were filled with love, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. Oh great, now he's immortal, broke, and trying to marry into royalty. Is it just me, or does that sound terrible? Anyway, thanks everyone for continuing to watch and support my channel. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like. Otherwise, just come back for the next video, I guess.